When we come back, a new report suggesting that during the 2016 election, the FBI Director James Comey wanted to expose that Russia was trying to meddle in the election, but it was the Obama administration that stopped him. So why would they do that? Laura Ingraham weighs in on this. Also, the latest on our blockbuster in terms of surveillance, unmasking, and the leaking of intelligence. And the Speaker of the House admitted earlier today that he's worried President Trump will reach out to Democrats to get a deal on health care if Republicans don't work out a solution. Laura Ingraham next, and Lou Dobbs.
Live from America's News headquarters, I'm Anita Vogel. Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn offering to testify in exchange for immunity. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. Flynn's lawyer confirming they're in talks with congressional panels and that his client wouldn't agree to be questioned in such a, quote, politicized environment without assurances against unfair prosecution. Flynn resigned after admitting he misled Vice President Mike Pence about the content of his discussions with the Russian ambassador to the U.S. North Carolina lawmakers passing a bill to roll back the state's so-called bathroom bill. That law required folks to use the bathroom matching their birth certificate. Critics said it discriminated against transgender people, while sports leagues and companies boycotted the state, costing North Carolina billions in lost revenues. I'm Anita Vogel. Now let's take you straight back to Hannity.
Welcome back to Hannity. So a new report by Newsweek claims that, quote, FBI Director James Comey attempted to go public as early as the summer of 2016 with information on Russia's campaign to influence the U.S. presidential election. But it was the Obama administration officials that blocked him from doing so. Two sources with knowledge of the matter tell Newsweek. Now, plus earlier today on a CNBC-hosted panel, Russian President Vladimir Putin himself said accusations of Russian interference in the election are, quote, lies. Take a look.
All our things are fictional, illusory, and provocations, lies. All these are used for domestic American political agendas.
You and the Russian government did never try to influence the outcome of the U.S. presidential election, and there will be no evidence found.
Ronald Reagan once, debating about taxes and addressing the Americans, said, watch my lips. He said, no, watch my lips, no.
Now, I don't take Putin at his word, and nobody should, and his history was a little bit mixed up. It was actually President George H.W. Bush, not Reagan, who said, read my lips. But the sentiment stands that Russia was not involved in the election, as was discussed by James Comey and Clapper and Admiral Rogers. We continue now, and with reaction, joining us is editor-in-chief of LifeSet, Fox News contributor, and nationally syndicated radio host Laura Ingraham. All right, I don't really care what Putin says in that sense, but here's the problem. When you look at the narrative that has gone on all this time without any evidence, and then we learn, as I was talking about with Newt in the first segment, about surveillance of Trump at a very deep level, a masking of Trump and the president-elect and those around him and his transition team, and then leaking intelligence, which is a felony. Now we've got a really deep issue here that we do know happened, but the media ignores that part. Your reaction?
Sean, I think the truth about this Comey revelation, the big story, Comey wanted to reveal this. I always like to think about motive. We have to be our journalistic detectives here. Who has a motive to release that information now? A lot of Democrats just want to keep this story going, so they have to feed the media beast every so often on the Russia story, which goes nowhere. But who has motive here? I would argue that Comey could have motive, or someone close to Comey could have the motive to release this, saying, look, I was a crusader for the truth. I wanted to get this information out before the voters went to the polls. Or, Sean, it could be someone high up in the Obama administration who was at that meeting. It was Kerry or Loretta Lynch, who wants to burnish their reputation as someone who, look, we didn't want to influence the election with this. Look, we were being very judicious in not putting out this information until October. We wanted to be very clear that everyone in the intelligence agencies were on board that Russia was actually trying to tamper with the elections. But what we know is that they are still leaking The leaking never stops with these people. They're now releasing information about what happened with a Comey meeting with top Obama administration officials. I mean, this is helping no one except perhaps the Obama people.
What is your take on Evelyn Farkas? And remember, she's out now, and she's with Hillary. And her original comment, which she walked back today in a major way, but my interpretation is it's very clear what she's talking about: surveillance, unmasking, and potentially leaking to our friends up on the Hill intelligence. What do you make of those comments? And why is she still on TV? Where's a lawyer? But go ahead.
I think her initial comments are probably more accurate. I mean, it blew up in the last 24 hours. But to me, it's becoming increasingly clear, and I think you agree, that there are a number of Trump transition people whose names were unmasked and then released to various friends in the press. These individuals had nothing to do with the Russia investigation, zero. But they wanted to demonize these people, and they wanted to, most of all, Sean, delegitimize the Trump conservative populist agenda. So they were going to delegitimize him on immigration, on tax reform, on health care, by keeping this perpetual cloud over him, by you know, his staff looking for information that I think had nothing to do with Russia, to try to besmirch the reputation perhaps of staffers in the transition. And I think when Devin Nunes and the Democrats cough up this information finally, I think we're going to have a very different view about all of this, and we're going to realize why the Democrats, frankly, are trying to demonize Devin Nunes.
Laura, great analysis, as always. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we'll have more with Laura, by the way, right after the break, and she'll be joined by our own Lou Dobbs. Also coming up, Speaker Ryan says he's worried the president will reach out to Democrats to get a deal done on health care if they don't come up with a solution in the Republican Party. We'll get to that, and later, Ari Fleischer and Austin Goolsbee will weigh in on the surveillance of the Trump campaign. Our top story, new developments. We have the very latest tonight on Hannity. Welcome back to Hannity. So earlier today, the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, said he's afraid that if the GOP doesn't come together, President Trump will reach out to Democrats to work on health care. Watch this.
Do you think it would have helped if the president were more involved in the policy itself?
Oh, he was deeply involved. That's the thing that I was so pleased and impressed with. He really rolled up his sleeves. So actually, he's up to speed on the issue. He knows the circumstances and the stances. What I worry about, Nora, is that if we don't do this, then he'll just go work with Democrats to try and change Obamacare. And that's not going to, that's hardly a conservative thing. This is a can-do president who's a business guy who wants to get things done. And I know that he wants to get things done with the Republican Congress. But if this Republican Congress allows the perfect to be the enemy of the good, I worry will push the president into working with Democrats. He's been suggesting that as much.
Here with reaction from the Fox Business Network, Lou Dobbs. We continue also with our friend Laura Ingraham is with us. Lou, I'll bring you in here.
You bet.
Okay, first of all, the Democrats are going to lead him down the primrose path and then finally stick a shiv in his back, because politically speaking.
Well, the problem is it's getting crowded back there on his back. There are too many shivs in it. You just heard the speaker. I mean, he's talking about President Trump being a businessman. He knows when his butt is being kissed, and I don't think Ryan could have been more transparent and obvious in doing so. The question becomes is, what has Ryan been telling this president? This was a bad bill. This was not the perfect, being the enemy of the good. This was a disastrous piece of legislation from Jump Street.
Not one single House member saw the bill before it was rolled out.
And not one single amendment, even though they were in regular order, not one. This is a calamity, a legislative calamity, and it was led by Speaker Ryan. He's the same guy who apparently President Trump is going to have lead tax reform. Let me tell you, exponentially, passing legislation becomes far more difficult because when you have a speaker who thinks he is some sort of tin-pot dictator.
Well, Laura, what's your reaction to that? If nobody sees the bill and you roll out the bill and no consensus is built, and then you say to the president, here, you go sell it, and everybody's trying their best to help, it wasn't a mistake made by not building the consensus before the release and having everyone agree before the release and bringing the moderates Tuesday, Sunday, study group, caucuses together?
Right. This was botched. This process was botched.
By?
The communications, I think by all parties. I think the White House was not as involved as it should have been. I think they allowed Paul Ryan to quarterback most of it. They came in kind of toward the end to try to repair things with the Freedom Caucus and then with the more moderate Republicans. And I think people, it's ridiculous at this point to start pointing fingers at the Freedom Caucus. I didn't understand Donald Trump's tweets at all about that today.
Well, where do you think that came from?
Let me just get this straight. I don't know, but let me just say this. Mark Meadows, in October of 2016, when Paul Ryan was disinviting Donald Trump to his big Fall Fest event in Wisconsin, Mark Meadows stood by Donald Trump, as did Dave Bratt and all these other members of the Freedom Caucus. So I'd be very careful if I were President Trump and alienating kind of the only people who were with you in October in the Republican hierarchy.
Laura, I think you're exactly right. But let's say it straightforwardly. Somebody has told the President of the United States something that is not true. There is no way in the world that this president should think, based on fact, the empirical, straightforward reality, that the Mark Meadows, who is the chair of the Freedom Caucus, that Jim Jordan, Congressman Jim Jordan, a founder of the Freedom Caucus, were doing anything but serving the nation, their constituents and their principles, and the president's.
That's their job.
And this
is their job.
And these are two of the, and Raul Labrador, these are three of the finest congressmen on the Hill.
Yeah, they're
Laura,
good people.
And this is,
they're good
they are
people
natural
and they're
allies of the
conservatives.
president.
Laura?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, and Lou's right, and I think for Paul Ryan to come out and say, gee, we're afraid the president's going to work with Democrats. Well, whose fault is that? I mean, if you were quarterbacking all of this, then you have to be straight with the president about who's in your caucus. There are some more moderate folks. There are some more conservative folks. And Paul Ryan knew
everybody
that the
should have
Freedom
agreed
Caucus
before.
members.
Shouldn't they have agreed before?
You have to lay. Yes, you have to lay the groundwork. You had 7 years to do this.
They took 2
and you
weeks.
come in and you rush this thing, and then it all fell apart, and it's Mark Meadows' fault.
Yeah.
That just is ridiculous.
All right, guys. Well, there is a fix. Start from the beginning, build the coalition, and get the job done for the American people, and move on to the next legislative item. What?
Could I just add one thing?
Yes,
here,
sir.
Very quickly. And that is, there's going to be a train wreck. And it's not going to be at the White House. It's going to be when the President of the United States finds out he was misled and the facts were misrepresented.
Wow.
This president will not put up with it, and the boys and girls who played cute on this one are going to pay a hell of a price, and they should.
All right. Thank you.